so we're going to roll in just a couple minutes. We're going to let everyone settle in with their food, and while y'all are doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do here at Words of Music and the organization that runs it, because I see a lot of new faces in the audience, and I'd love for you to know more about us. So what we do is have this festival every year, but it is a festival that supports work that happens 365 days a year. I am not kidding. I will answer an email on Christmas because sometimes that's what it takes. So our work is getting books where books typically aren't accessible through One Book, One Performance. We pick a book every year. We encourage everyone in the city to read the same book at the same time, with this idea that we're going to grow stronger as a community through a shared reading experience. But when we do that, we have to recognize that approximately 27% of adults in our city struggle with literacy and reading every single day. So we develop a curriculum for that book, and we give that book so many places. We give the book and the curriculum free of charge to adult education programs throughout the city, and right now it is being used in 7 separate adult education programs to teach adults to read. We also give the book to carceral facilities. We were able to get the book into both juvenile and adult detention centers, jails, and prisons. I've also been really lucky these past few years. We developed a partnership with Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, and we've been able to bring the book and its author inside the jail and have book club with the people who are being held there. We get the book into the ears of the blind and print handicapped through a partnership with WRBH Reading Radio. They record our book every year, and they broadcast that book cover to cover. And last but not least, just in case poverty is your barrier to reading access of our book, we make sure that every branch of the New Orleans Public Library has at least 4 copies. So there's always a free copy somewhere in the neighborhood. To bring the whole city together after we do all this outreach, we have tons of free family-friendly events. And then we also host the Words of Music Festival that hopefully brings all the literary lovers of our city together. Any proceeds from this festival go directly into that mission-fulfilling work that I just described to you. So every lunch ticket you buy, any donation you make, any grants we receive, anything that covers our operating costs, everything above that goes right back into the work. So thank you all for supporting that work. Thank you all so much for being here. We also love supporting local businesses. We are supporting two separate independently owned bookstores. We've got Candace at Tubby and Blues right over there in the corner. They will be selling all books for folks who have sessions in this building. And I am sure I'm speaking for the people on the stage when I say they'd be happy to sign.
Yes.
All right, cool. So be sure to grab a copy of the novel we'll be discussing today, Walkin Blues by Kalamu, Salaam, and get it signed before you leave. Also, we don't want to forget that the oldest Black-owned bookstore is right next door. So to that end, everyone who got here today was automatically entered in to win a $25 Community Book Center gift card. And the person who won today in our random drawing is Marjorie Pedlers. Marjorie, is that you? Yes. I'll bring you that gift card in just a second. So I'm going to get out of the way here. We are here today to talk about Walkin Blues by Kalamu, Salaam with Liegh McInnis, who I learned last night. Is it wasn't her program?
No, I'm a regular visitor once a month to the Friday night.
Oh, once a month visitor. And I know him through his work on Prince. His work on Prince is phenomenal. I've never seen you talk about anything other than Prince. So I'm actually really excited to hear you talk about a non-Prince book with Kalamu, Salaam. They'll be talking about Walkin Blues, and I'm going to get out of the way.
How y'all doing? Oh, wait. I'm old for the process. I'm gonna try that one more time. How y'all doing? There we go. Actually, that gave me a great segue because one of the lessons that I learned from You probably won't remember this. It's like going back to like 97, 98. And he said something about there were people who knew him as a poet who didn't know him as a playwright. There were people who knew him as a playwright who didn't know him as an essayist. There were people who knew him as an essayist who didn't know him as an editor. And so that started my love of writers who wrote in multiple genres. And it started that was the thing for me to say it was okay to write in multiple genres. So I appreciate that segue because you know, Kalamu, there are so many people whose literary careers in life we owe a debt to Kalamu for his direct mentorship, but also for blazing a pathway, for being able to see writers do what we want. So please give it up as we begin this conversation. So, of course, we are discussing the novel. There we go. And I love like long titles. So, first title is Walkin Blues, but it is Walkin Blues, a speculation and meditation on the life and legend of Robert Johnson. So, I want to start with a pretty simple question first. What is your earliest memory of blues music, and what was that experience?
My earliest memory of blues music is the Lower Ninth Ward. And people just played on porches and what have you. It was, some folk might call it practice. Some folk might call it rehearsing music, whatever. But they would just be playing. My earliest memory. And the first time the music really hit me, I was doing voter registration work for the NAACP. And we would have different neighborhoods we would go into. At that time, I should explain, in order to register to vote in Louisiana, part of the registration was, on the day that you registered, you had to be able to calculate your birthday, year, month, and day. So you would say, born in such and such a year, so and so month, such and such day. But that wasn't enough. We want to know how many days are you old. So you had to say, so many years. And you had to be careful with the months because all months are not 30. And so many days old. And you had to be able to calculate it. Our job, part of our job was to teach people how to calculate how old you were on the day that you were registered. So if we went to somebody's house and you say like, I can't go today. We say, all right, we'll go tomorrow. If you say, I'm going tomorrow, okay, here's the calculation for you so you know what day. That was the law in Louisiana. I don't know about other places. Lord.
Let me show you.
To really answer the question, the first time I really remember, y'all know where James Alley is? James Alley. Yeah. You know about James Alley. See, he know about James Alley, he ain't nowhere near.
Right.
We'll go ahead and tell him a little bit about James Alley.
Well, actually, all I really know about James Alley is that I have an uncle who would come over against his mama's wishes and hang out at James Alley. And would tell, when we got back, would tell people, they would all have to make up stories about where they were, because my grandmother didn't want them to know that they were at James Alley.
Well, anyway, if you read Louis Armstrong's early autobiography, he talks about that he was arrested for shooting a gun off New Year's Eve. But he used to live in James Alley. And the thing about it was that part of town was known as a blues part of town. And I'm doing voter registration, right? And I'm invited into this house. Back then, we had 3-room houses. Bedroom, kitchen, living room, and the bathroom is usually upside the kitchen, in the back. I'm invited into this house. The woman invites me into the house. And as I'm coming in, I see this dude leaving out the back door. And she's got a skirt on and a bra. And, you know, I must have been about 12, 13 years old, something like that. So I'm just looking.
No doubt. Take it all.
And for her, this was just like walking down the street, man. Anyway, everyday routine. It was, but I'm looking. And she must have figured out that I'm looking. And she said, well, I guess he opened up to look. And so then we get down to the business of voter registration, which you have to figure out, including your age to the day. You have to be able to say, I'm so many years, so many months, and so many days. And you have to be careful about the months. February, it's a short month. So forth, March is 31 days, following February, 28 days, 29 middle, it's a leap year.
I was gonna say, they leave you.
Oh, man. All of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm there trying to figure this stuff out and give it to her. So what day you going, because it depends on what day you were going to register, how old you were, and so forth and so on. And it struck me, I said, they're doing this shit just to keep us from registering. That's all it was about. It wasn't about, mathematical ability. It was just to keep people from registering. Because if you were a day off, if you said you were, 22 days old and you were actually 23 days old, they would reject your application. This was voter registration back in the late 50s. And because, let's see, it must have been, no, I take it back, it must have been 61. When I first got to St. Augustine, 61, I was in class. I went to St. Augustine in 61. My parents sent me there. I didn't go to St. Augustine. I was sent to St. Augustine. Because I wanted to go to 35, which my father graduated from, which all my last names were. So we were serving in high school, but I was sent to St. Augustine. And so all of these things come up, but I was good at math. And as a result, and I could read, so as a result, I was good at voter registration in Louisiana back in those days, the late 50s and the early 60s.
So that incident kind of galvanized the love of the blues.
Yeah, well, I had that woman in James Alley, she taught me something. I'm supposed to be teaching voter registration, And part of what she taught me is have no shame about who you are.
Yes.
And that's That's a deep one. That is a deep one, because this society is so fundamentally racist and sexist that it teaches you to be ashamed, particularly if you are a black woman, to be ashamed of who you are. Because at that time there was no black women to, in fact, one of the first black women to achieve anything. And I can't say Louisiana, but I can say in Mississippi, you need a black well. I don't know how many else.
Politician, organizer, one of the first black women elected to office after Reconstruction. Just a stalwart in particularly in critical thinking and movement work. Like, she was a top strategist even before she got elected to office.
Right, so you need a black well. And I was part of the Free Southern Gators, so we traveled all around Mississippi and North Louisiana. We figured it was a lost cause. Because it was. I mean, by the time we got to Ruston, these people, damn, ain't they got no pride, no nothing, you know. But, no.
So I want to delve this because you made me think about something, right? So, when we talk about front porch, right, and front porch extends to a lot of different things, but could you talk a little bit about, right, coming into watching people play the blues, but also the history of front porch storytelling, and how maybe some of that notion of our history of front porch storytelling and the history of hearing people play the blues as a young person kind of combined those two loves and made you even more interested in the blues as both a musical and storytelling art.
Well, y'all ever heard of Rockin' the House? Yeah. All right. That is used as a metaphor in most contemporary and in recent historical, but it actually has a meaning that is physical. Y'all know what the diddly bow is? Well, I've seen them construct diddly bows. Really? Yeah. Come inside the house, you know. Having a nail in the house, string of wire between them, and you play it, and the house becomes, the house, side of the house becomes the sounding board. And you pluck the string, right, the wire. It was actually building wire.
Right. There you go.
See, you see, I mean, he from Mississippi, so you know what I'm talking about.
These hands spent one summer chopping cotton. That was the only summer I needed to spend chopping cotton.
And so, when they would play the diddly bow, the house would really, literally rock to those sounds from the diddly bow, which was basically wire that was distrung between nails on the side of the house. And there were people who could play the diddly bow. They couldn't play no guitar.
Right. They played the diddly bow.
But they could play the diddly bow. And I don't know how the diddly bow got its name. But most of you all have heard of Bo Diddley.
Right. There you go. And his style of playing really mimics the picking and the plucking of the diddly bow. I mean, that probably, I would say, is what separates the way he plays from the way B.B. King plays, with much more of a staccato and what is it, with the vibrato playing. B.B. would get a lot of vibrato in his string playing. But really had very good vibrato in his and really that plucking kind of sound that you got in the diddly bows here.
Yeah, so anyway, you asked your question, but that's
right. That's
so when you start talking about blues, and particularly talking about Mississippi, the music, you gotta understand that the music that people hear had very little, it wasn't connected directly to what we hear today. And what you hear from a guitar player or whatever. And this aspect of the music is part of what gave the blues sound to the music, which I was attracted to because that's what I heard, you know. And we don't realize a lot of what people like and dislike is just based on the environment, what they hear around them. And if you've never heard it, you don't understand what rocking house really means.
And just kind of put a connection on that. So the Jackson State University Band is known for this routine called Jazz Rocks the House. I mean, it's one of their national signature things. What people don't know is they stole that from Grammy. And so when you talk about the video and watching it being made, and then Grammy really, so you have Grammy from Russell, Louisiana, right? They were initially known for doing, and to show you how kind of blues culture works. Jackson State stole it from them in the midst of the game. So it wasn't like I'm gonna go for no, like Grammy played it, and the Jackson State band director like, that's ours now. But it talks about that cross-fertilization of blues culture between Louisiana and Mississippi that I always kind of remind us when we talk about that indigo and tying it together. I want to bring it. So I want to come back to, so in your book, which was for me, when I read it in '94, it just kind of opened up the whole new world to me. So what is like reclaiming the Black blues self? You give us the 6 elements that constitute the blues aesthetic. And so my question is, what is it that makes the blues more than woe is the beat?
More than what?
More than woe is the beat. What makes the blues more than just sad old Black people music?
Oh, because my baby done left me. Or conversely, when she throw up her arms around me like a circle around the sun. You understand what I'm saying? It's hard to explain some of these metaphors to people. Unless you've been working up in the field picking cotton, you don't know nothing about a circle around the sun.
Right. Or heat monkeys.
Yeah, I mean, because when you're out in the field, and you know what time of day is the hottest time of the day? Come on, y'all.
3 o'clock.
Between 3 and 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's the hottest time of the day.
Yeah.
And you be out, you look up and you see a circle around the sun. I mean, these things, these metaphors that were part of the music were also part of life. So rocking the house, circle around the sun, you know. I'm trying to remember the lyrics. I'll be glad to see you leave like the sun going down. Unless you had to work outside for a while, you don't understand what it means for the sun going down. Because you work, as they used to say, from can't see to can't sleep. You get up in the morning and you can't see, and you step outside and you feel your way, and then the sun starts to come up. This brings up a story for me, which is completely different from Mississippi and all the way down. But I was in one of them, with Providence, Rhode Island. I was in Rhode Island. And I was instructed, they wanted somebody whom I valued as an instructor, wanted me to see the sunrise on that dang boat. I had to get up early in the morning. I'm in Providence, Rhode Island. Go down to the wall and stand there and wait for the sun to come up. And I know about the sun going down because the sun sets kind of slowly in the west. But in the east, what had happened was, I'm standing there and you could see on the horizon, you can see the sky getting lighter and lighter and blue, like blue. Then the sun comes, but the sun doesn't rise up slowly, it pops up.
Okay.
Kind of
Right.
just jumps up, almost like it disappears out of the middle of the night. And I was fascinated by it. I didn't want to see it again. But I was fascinated by that sight. And so when you ask me some of these questions, it has to do with life experience.
Right.
And what we take today, many times, as literary metaphor,
Right.
was actually just
Right.
people's description of their
Right.
life experience.
Right. And being able to encode those images, to know that while you made the song may be a romantic song, the images used in the song are about social political play.
Right.
Right? When you take even a song like Big Boss Man, right? You ain't so big, you just
Oh,
that song, right? Which is
And the reason it was tall because you were sitting on the hall.
exactly. Which became a metaphor for the authority, but not his moral authority, but simply your physical authority, in which then all those things become encoded, and then black people who, as you talk about in the 6 elements of the blues aesthetic, that you know the joke.
Right.
So the joke doesn't have to be explained to you because you know the lived experience. So you know that it's a social political song simply because of the imagery that's being used in those lines.
Yeah, Big Boss Man. Big Boss Man.
Yeah, can't you hear me when I talk?
Don't you hear me when I talk?
So now I know it's impossible to draw a line in the sand, and say, this is where one genre of music ends and this is where another begins. But I want you to talk about, to whatever way you want to, about particular jazz masters that you see and their use or engagement of the blues. When you think of jazz masters, who do you most identify with?
Who do I most identify with the blues? Have to be Duke Ellington. And Duke was, we went, no, I take that back. I most identify with Taj Mahal. Because Taj and the Edison right there.
I was good before you said that. You said, I said Taj Mahal, you said the Gaucho. I was like, oh. Be caught up.
Well, Taj came to the school we had at Indiana and played for the kids. And I remember Taj was telling me about reggae, where reggae came from. He said it was to ride the donkeys and what have you up and down the Blue Mountains in Jamaica. And they'd get that rhythm going. Like that. And what we would call an off rhythm. But that off rhythm had to do with riding up and down the mountains on the back of a donkey and what have you. So, the reason I say Duke Ellington in terms of the blues was Duke Ellington, as far as I knew, was the first musician to consciously work various elements of the music, tie them to the social reality of the time. So the train songs, y'all see where I'm going with this. You know, those train songs and everything that Duke Ellington is famous for. And the most famous one, he didn't even write. A-Train was a Village Greyhound company.
Okay.
You know, take the A-Train. That's the quickest way to get to Harlem. But the train used to be the major mode of transportation before the airplane. Today, most people know airplane, but they don't know train as a major mode. And of course, the people in and around the New York area, they know the subway. And that's called a train. But why is the subway called a train? Think about this. Why is the subway called a train? Teeny, you up in that area now? Well, the subway ran on a rail that was the same as riding a train. You know, it's the same. And so you had these train rhythms and what have you. Duke Ellington brought all of that Daybreak Express and so forth. And so I don't want to belabor this point because I think it's obvious once you hear it and then you go back and so you listen to some of that old Duke Ellington music and they really got it.
Yeah.
They got it because the trains have a sound to them. And you know, I could say clickety clack and y'all know what I'm talking about. But that has an analog in terms of the sound the music makes, the band makes. And so Duke was the first one, as far as I know, to basically take the social environment of the time and make it mode of transportation and transform that into music.
Which is critical important because particularly early blues music, you would not consider a guitar player or a harmonica player of notable reputation if you could make a train out.
Right.
Right? I mean, you couldn't get hired. Nobody would want you around if you couldn't make a train come. So the fact that Duke Ellington is incorporating that, I never knew that. I never really connected it that way.
Yeah, but you can hear it.
Right, exactly.
If you know Duke Ellington music.
Right, you hit a train come. So making a train as a part of that Black Exodus search and
Right.
journey for a better place of peace.
Right, and I'm going to make one more connection beyond, and this is me talking. Now, I've never heard them talk about it. When I say them, I mean blues musicians. Bill Walter with the harmonica.
Right.
It's a hard to train.
Yeah, make a train come. Again, among players, guitar players, you could not get a gig. You would get run out of the juke joint, because when the club, if you could make a train come. So yeah, that is critically important that you talk about that being one of the times that the blues really gets codified.
Right.
In a way that we understand what it is.
Right, it's codified in the music.
Right.
And what had happened was, when jazz comes along, first, this is a shorthand. Jelly Roll Morton was the first one to pick up on transportation because he traveled a lot from New Orleans, but he also made a walk in Los Angeles. And so, how do you get to Los Angeles? He didn't fly.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And all of this lived experience becomes part of the music that he makes. Good.
And not to belabor, but to make this connection since we're at this point. So when I tell this to people, people are like, wow, I never got that. When we talk about Jelly Roll Morton, right? Check this out, because people never think of it this way. So you got Little Richard and Chuck Berry at the same time.
Right.
People don't realize Chuck Berry was a suburban poet, and Little Richard was a juke joint Catholic poet. He was technically the blacker poet, and I mean that because talking about transportation. Chuck Berry is writing songs about mom, dad, I'm in college, send money for school, I need a new car. Ain't no regular black person writing those kind of songs or doing those kind of things in 1950. So the fact that you can also look at modes of transportation as far as where you were living in the area becomes another way that the blues is documenting, right? What black people are existing and going through. That makes sense.
Right.
So when we talk about Jelly Roll and the train and then how it shows up in both Chuck Berry and Little Richard's way of they singing about modes of transportation, it connects directly with the thing.
And so then there is a distinct development in the music and what is called rhythm and blues. Right? So the rhythm and blues is blues music, but you put a faster rhythm with it.
Right.
You know,
Right. That's it.
That's all it is. That's all it is. And when McKinley Morgan
I just have a childhood memory. I won't tell here, but my grandmother was so disgusted that I didn't know that Kenny Morgan field was muddy water. Like my grandmother thought we were raising the dumbest damn child. Because I knew McKinley Morgan field. I knew McKinley Morgan field, and I knew what it was. Because I'm from parts of Mississippi. I knew both of them. McKinley Morgan field wore Deacon suits. Muddy Waters wore suits of Cafe Blues, please. So I did not know they were the same person until one day I was like, hey! Like I was at the dinner table, I was like, hey! Mr. Morganfield. And my grandmother was like, yeah? Muddy Waters. My grandmother was like, yeah? Same person. And my grandmother turned to my mother and said, don't send the boy to college, he ain't that bright. So that, and sadly, a week or so later, I grew up in the barbershop where Ike Turner used to hang out with Wade because Wade was one of his songwriting partners. And I hated going to Mr. Wade's barbershop because Mr. Wade decided you need a song with your haircut. No, I don't, Mr. Wade, I just need a haircut. And whenever the women would leave, you drop yourself and whenever the women would leave, it would be the same conversation. Every time it would be the same conversation. Somebody would say, come on, White. You know you beat that one. No, I'm saying that. No, let me take it. So I knew Mr. Ike. I knew Mr. Ike from the barbershop. But again, 2 weeks later, at the dinner table, hey, Mr. Ike. And my grandma was like, yeah. Like, I intend, she turned to my mother. My mother just went, so anyway, go to Kenny Morganfield. So, yes, Kenny Morganfield, let go ahead.
was Muddy Water.
Yes.
And I knew Muddy Waters before I knew McKinley Morgan field. See, and then I found out, well, yeah, that was his birth name.
Right.
But that ain't the name he became famous for. Then nobody asked to see. They wasn't going to see Mr. Morgan.
Right.
Muddy Waters.
You buy no ticket for McKinley.
So, what I'm getting to is that the blues had an undercurrent, and part of that undercurrent had to do with what we called ourselves, and not just what blues called. I want you to think about this, because this is a big, big difference. We was called, and I'll use the vernacular, we was called niggas. But we called ourselves something else. We named ourselves something else. So this whole concept of naming oneself became clear to me, and that's why most people know me as Kalamu. They don't know nothing about Bell.
Right. They buy a ticket for that.
No. You know, so, and that's so important when we realize that we have a responsibility to name our world, which includes ourselves. We have a responsibility to shape it. I want to say one final thing about that. It may not seem to be much to us today, because most people are literate today. But I came up during a period when literacy was actually something that was taught. And I had an experience. A guy comes up to me and he says, man, I want to thank you. I said, thank you for what? For letting me learn how to read. And I said, I don't know this guy. I said, I don't have nothing to do with it. You know. He said, no, man. Not many people will let me come sit up in their house. Right? And their wife would teach me how to read. And that woman right there, sitting right there, Salaam, She taught many a person to read, not just the young people, but adults, some of the adults also, to read and write. I didn't know this man from nobody. If I saw him today, I would never be able to pick him out. But he knew who I was, and he knew that I was married to Tiara, and he could come in the house, he would come in the house. I wouldn't even be home. And he could come to the house and sit there at the table, and Tiara would teach him how to read. We don't think about these things today, because, you know, it's right. This is the life we live in today. Back then, you think about it, somebody had to teach you how to read, and many an adult went through life never knowing how to read. And part of what we did with our Hidiana was we were education for the community. And at whatever level we were at, we wanted to take it to another level. So if you were at a level where you couldn't read, you wanted to take it up to a level where you could read. And so I won't go with it. I know you got a question.
So I'm gonna do one more quick question, and I want to get right to the novel. This final kind of preface question. So in root theory, the blues foundation funk, Tony Bowler makes it clear that funk music is firmly rooted in the blues. In what ways do you see funk being the fruit of the blues, and which funk artists or bands do you see having the most blues sensibility?
That's a mouthful. I think, although it may not be clear to people, but Paul and Funkadelic did the most.
Yes.
They did the most. And when Clinton asked Gary to do Maggot Break.
Oh, yes, indeed. Especially the live.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and if y'all not familiar with that, I'm sorry for y'all.
There you go.
It's deficient, but that was the blues.
Right.
He finds his mother dead, as the story goes, and so he plays this elegy for his mother on the guitar.
And just to kind of connect it, what brought that full circle for me was your poem Cosmic Death.
Yeah.
Because both reading Cosmic Death and having you recite it and reading it to my class, like that was for me the affirmation that funk is rooted in blues, both the storytelling and the rhythm. Because the blues was about what we call a spirituality that was Afrofuturism before we had a term Afrofuturism. And I think that Maggot Brain is firmly rooted in that particular tradition.
Right. And here on another element that I add to that is that people say when the jump from blues to rhythm happened, and they usually pick out people like Little Richard and Bo Diddley. I've explained what Bo Diddley got his name. These people came out deep south, right? And so there were elements of the deep south, which are life and death elements, which includes a lot of prison time, and includes what's called make do. You know, you make do with what you got till you can get what you want.
There you go. There you go.
You know, and so these musicians were masters of making do. And the newer elements, which were quote unquote citified elements, didn't come in. You understand, a lot of the blues musicians initially, they were riding the lines of the railroads, and they would hop on. See if I can explain this, because it's kind of important. a lot of those railroad cars, not the dining cars, not the Pullman cars, but the freight cars, you know, they be carrying stuff back and forth. And if you found a freight car that was empty, going the direction you wanted to go, you just jumped in.
Yeah, jump in.
You jumped in. I saw a kid get his legs cut off. But that's a whole other story. But these elements are part of a lived experience that made the music what it became. And so part of the element was us moving from the country to the city.
Right.
And when we get into the city, we have different environmental responses.
Right.
You no longer ride the mules and so forth and so on.
And the city's loud. So you gotta get electrified. Because can't nobody hear the acoustic instrument.
Don't even care about it.
Right. Look at you crazy like what you doing is.
You know.
Yeah.
And as Son House told Robert Johnson, boy, you making mighty commotion on that box. and so the things change rapidly in the city. And like you talked about, electrify. Well, outside the city, you couldn't get electricity. And how you gonna have electric guitar and you got no electricity? Think about, we don't even think about these things today. Because people usually, like what, last night when Carl was on that stage playing that guitar the way he played it, it was an open song. Carl could play an acoustic guitar, but he's also very adept with the electric guitar. He knew what he was doing, that he didn't always have to pluck the strings. But that's a whole nother story. I don't want to get into it. But rhythm and blues has to do with taking the blues aesthetic and adding to it modern rhythms which comes out of urban life. You know, and then juicing it up. What they call juicing it up. That is giving it electricity. And electricity brings a whole nother aesthetic to the music. And so the aesthetic of electricity, initially, just brings in electrifying the music, make it quote unquote louder, and then you can do some things with distortion you couldn't do otherwise. But then, in the modern age, it wasn't just electricity, it was electronics, which you could hear, and so the mood synthesizer and so forth and so on. I won't go too far into all that because I'm not equipped to go into it. I can talk about it, describe it, but you know, a musician like what's his name, Herbie Hancock. Herbie Hancock became so interested in electronics. You know, listen to Drowning Volunteer, Ray Charles, on an album in person, and he's playing electric piano, and that's just electrified. But Herbie Hancock heard something else that was possible, because at that time it was when electronics, and it wasn't just amplification and distortion. It was different sounds that was made. I don't know what to
No, but I think that's important. The synthesizer stopped being a mimicker of the piano and became its own thing. Became its own sound, right? So the keyboard sound is initially there because you just want to pick. You don't want to pick on the horn players, right? But outside of not wanting to pick on those horn players, as the electronics get involved, it becomes its own sound. As people are, like Herbie Hancock and others, are searching for new sounds as a way to articulate where they are in the moment. So I think it's very important because coming to your novel, as a traveling odyssey, it's about traveling and finding yourself in different spaces. So my question then is, as someone who has written in multiple genres, what does writing
What is multiple genres?
I knew you was gonna get me on that. And then we have drawn these lines to say a poem is not a short story, and a short story is not a novel, and a novel is not these other things, right?
So when the yoga man,
well, from my standpoint, it is just literature, it is just art, right? But for those people who have to, it's a poem to those people who have to.
but some people call it one of those first novels.
Yep, they call it one of the first novels. So I'm with you, right? But for people who would know you for writing in different genres, what does writing a novel about Robert Johnson allow you to do in, say, writing an essay or a research piece with an argument?
I'm gonna put it in the vernacular. Got more than one book.
There you go. There you go. That works. That works. That works.
It's just that simple. And that's one of the things that writing about Robert Johnson, his first wife died in childhood, Jenny. And when Jenny died, he went off, nobody had seen him for 3 days. And blood on his face and everything. How you got blood on his face? His wife died in childbirth. He puts his hand in the blood, smears it on his face. After 3 days, nobody seen him. So that these experiences become a favorite part of the music. So Robert Johnson is known as the king of the Delta blues. And if anybody knows about the blues, it's about escape, ecstasy, and also the environment in which you grew up, and the things that happen, and inevitable tragedies. And all of that is in Robert Johnson's music. So he puts all that. So what I got to Walkin Blues, it's in the title, y'all. How did we get where we got? We walked. Didn't have no, few people had a vehicle to ride, and that became very popular shortly thereafter. But because of that racist Ford, it was straight out racist and admired Hitler and everything else like that. But he also modernized the automobile. You know, because the Ford, the Model A Ford wasn't the only vehicle at the time. But he was the one that modernized it and made it available to mass producers. Well, I won't get into all that.
So we clearly see Robert Johnson as a religious or spiritual figure. Can you talk about the blues man in any way that you want to talk about that as a kind of religious or spiritual icon?
What do you mean by religion?
That call, and that's why I put religion class spiritual.
What do you mean by religion? That's the question.
Okay. that the blues man was tapping into an emotive experience that allowed Black people to understand that this physical thing was much more than what they were existing. And it seemed that in the novel and just in Robert Johnson's life, one of his appeals was his ability to bring about the overflow of the spirit so that Black people knew that this hell, the physical hell in which they were encased, one, didn't define them, and two, would not be the end journey of what they were doing.
The question is, does your environment define you or do you define your environment? Think about that. Because this is a deep question. Does your environment define you or do you define your environment? And it seems to me that being human means to define one's environment. Right? And to be less than human means to allow your environment to define you. And And Robert Johnson was always trying to make his way. And the last woman he runs up on, Zuli, shows him something that he had never seen before. She completely dominates him by dominating her environment. She don't try to make him a slave or nothing like that. But this is who I am. You understand what I'm saying? And when you get to the point where you can be who you are, and at the same time be with somebody else, but be yourself, be whoever you are, whomsoever you be, right? That's a beautiful thing. And that's what Zuli teaches him, how to be himself. You know, I was called.
So, through characters such as Sweetwater, Tanner, Bobo, Genie, and others, you make it clear that blues music is complex because blues people are complex. Why is it important to show this type of human diversity when presenting black people, particularly black Southerners?
Because we're not niggas.
Yes.
I mean, the complex way of human experience is what we embody, what we are capable of achieving and creating. And that complex web is deeper than most people give in this society and give quote unquote the biggest spread to be. And I tell you something else that's even deeper than that. What comes along at the same time, period, is what's called modern psychology. Freud, who's a dopehead. Yeah, I mean, man, I don't know, get into it. You smiling, I see you.
Between Freud and the person who came out and
Young.
Yeah, those two in the battle back and forth. And the fact that Young would often return back to those repressions that Freud was constantly telling us that we all have these repressions. I kept wondering, if we have these repressions, Freud, from where did they come from?
Yeah. And see, and Young was someone who said he didn't need drugs to escape, quote unquote, the prison of being a human being. And Freud said that you needed drugs to break out of that prison of being a human being. I mean, without getting too deep into it, Young was, quote unquote, a disciple of Freud. But it all happens at the same time period. That's the thing. At the turn of the 20th century, and then you get into, by the time you get into the 20s, and those of us who are educated, y'all know what I'm talking about. At this time period comes along, and these things have arrived: electricity, the lights, Edison, and all like that, and so forth. So all of that arrives at the same time, and it's a whole new. Think about this: you can walk in a room. There's a part of the book where Robert Johnson is invited into this woman's house, and she tells him that's the washroom, and he go up in there, and he pulls this thing, and the light comes on, and he pulls it again, the light goes out,
Right.
and he's just fascinated by that.
Right.
We wouldn't be fascinated by that now, turning on the light and turning off the light. But think, if you lived in a place where the only light you had was the sun, right? Or lamplight, but now you got something. You can just pull a string and then the electricity makes the light come on.
My father would tell me the story all the time as a child. He got 2 of the best whippings because he kept breaking the string, turning the light on. And my grandmother just, like, she just got tired of him breaking the string, because he wanted to know where did the light go when he pulled the string. So, yeah.
Yeah, you know, so there's a part of the book where Robert Johnson is standing in that bathroom, fascinated by that. And I bring that up because us controlling our environment, we are clear that's what, quote unquote, human beings truly do. But that was not a common thing back at the turn of the century. And so Robert Johnson was fascinated by this. It's like your father.
So we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to end on this question.
I'm sorry for being long.
No, this is great. Your entire part of your entire legacy is either redefining or rebuffing what genius is and what genius looks like. So, in whatever way you want to address it, why is it important that we return to Robert Johnson as a seminal example of genius?
Because you can take what is and make it what ain't. You know, and not just what ain't, but you can take what is and make what ain't into what you bring. And that's deep. You see what I'm saying? And to show you how deep it is and how, quote unquote, elemental it is, we look at another person, be it man, woman, whatever, and we think about what that person would mean to us. You see? There ain't nothing to us now.
Right.
But I was thinking with her,
Right.
man.
Right.
You know, or you look at another person. Think about that. That's one of the reasons why we love whomever it is we love. Because we think about what that person could mean to us in particular. You understand what I'm saying? And it's not, this is not a gender excursion. This is a human excursion. Because sometimes the relationship doesn't even have anything to do with gender. It might be the same gender, whatever, so forth and so on. And there's some people that get hung up with non-gender sexual relations, talking about dolls and all this kind of stuff. And I don't want to get too deep into it because I don't want people to have their perversions dominate their thinking about their human relationships. But most of us think about pleasure and what gives us pleasure. And the ultimate pleasure is with another person, right? Y'all can answer me. Right?
There you go.
You understand what I'm saying?
They didn't want to feel indicted about it. They were like, oh, let me let somebody else in. Let me let somebody else in.
But that's part of what the blues signified for people. You understand? What to give, quote unquote, full voice to your secret, like, you know. And that's what the blues, you know. She make me want to holler, make me want to scream. That wasn't pain.
Right.
Come on now. You understand? And these aspects of human existence are talked about in the blues and the music. But it is something we are taught to be ashamed of as far as social relationships go in modern age. We're supposed to feel some shame about these these real human experiences.
And to be stoic about it as well.
Well, it's hard to be stoic about it when she makes me want to holler.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And wait.
No, I was just going to say that the Stoicism, y'all know about the Greek philosophy. There's that whole chapter in the book, the Walkin Blues, there's a whole chapter where they started talking about elements of blues, but also elements that have to do with the human expressions that often accompany the blues. And what was wonderful about the blues was it didn't, to use like what the old folks would say, it didn't try to put a dress on that man. Didn't try to wrap it up or nothing, but this is a basic part, you know, of what human beings are. And there's another chapter in the book where Robert Johnson has been asked to play music for this couple. And this couple is a white man and a black woman who get together. He's paying the bill, the white man's paying the bill. The woman comes out after she said, tells him, you can stop playing now. We finished. And he said, okay. He understands what was going on. Most of us will not admit to these aspects of what's going on. But he understood quite clearly. So anyway, I'm saying all that to encourage y'all about it.
Please, everybody, remember Salaam.